Wednesday. You know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., the Southern California Writers Association turns our Facebook page over to a new writer to talk about their books and work. This morning, we are honored to have with us Antoine Wilson. Antoine's new novel, Mouth to Mouth, was recently featured on Barack Obama's summer reading list. He's also the author of The Interloper and Panorama City. Oh, yeah, very nice. His writing has appeared in the Paris Review, Quarterly West, and Best New American Voices, among other publications, and is a contributing editor at A Public Space. Antoine has received the Carol, is it Houck?
Houck.
Houck?
Yeah.
I had three choices and missed that last one.
Oh, that's okay. I'm probably getting it wrong.
Carol Houck Smith Fiction Fellowship at the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing and the San Fernando Valley Award for Fiction, and has been a finalist for the National Magazine Award, Southern California Independent Booksellers Association Book of the Year Award, and the Foreword Magazine Book of the Year Award. He's taught writing at the University of Iowa, the excellent writing program there, the University of California, San Diego, and the University of California, Los Angeles Extension Writers Program. Stanford Continuing Studies, and the Otis School of Art and Design. Born in Montreal and raised in California and Saudi Arabia, he now lives here in Southern California with his family. So I didn't butcher that too badly.
No, I feel like it's so long, too many awards and things. I mean, not that I've gotten too many awards, but I know it's just a heavy burden to bear. The San Fernando Valley Award for Fiction, though, we call that the Northridge Nobel. That's what I call it.
Your gift of irony is like. Anyway, so all right, so we met before when in the original release of Mouth to Mouth, which is a stunningly different book that I think people who want to be taken on a journey in a different way, wanting to go on vacation, but not wanting to take the cruise, maybe the adventure route, would love Mouth to Mouth. So, and it's a twisty, complex thriller. So I don't want to say too much. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the book, so I don't give anything away that you don't want me to give away.
Sure. Yeah, I like that metaphor that it's not the cruise, but it's also not a trek, I think, too much. It might be like a trip to Costa Rica with some zip lining involved, because for some reason I wrote a book that's fairly short. It's about 180 pages and the chapters are short, and it reads quickly for a lot of people, which is, I don't know, it's gratifying to hear. The weird thing about writing a book is I'm the one person in the world who can't experience this book as a reader. Unless, I have some sort of brain injury or special, eternal sunshine of the spotless mind thing. So it's always interesting to hear from readers what their experience is like, and I never know what it's going to be like. Mouth to Mouth, by way of introduction, is a novel in which there's an unnamed narrator who's a sort of middling novelist. He's making his way to Germany to try to capitalize on being called a cult author by a publication there. And he's at JFK waiting out a flight delay, and he hears the name of somebody that he knew in college about 20 years earlier. And they weren't exactly friends. They were just sort of maybe acquaintances. And then he sort of like, is that the same guy? Jeff Cook. It's a common enough name, but then it turns out to be the same guy. And Jeff Cook is now a very successful art dealer. And he invites our narrator up to the first class lounge while they wait out the flight delay. And once they're up there, he proceeds to tell our narrator the story of his rise, going from he didn't have much going on in college. He didn't have money or anything like that, and now he's a fancy art dealer. So it's about how he got to where he is, a story that begins with him saving someone's life on the beach in Santa Monica.
So okay, so what I love is writers chasing validation and any drop of praise or success or anything in here to being moved up to the first class lounge with your friend is a great. I mean, it's so like so many writers I know. So it is an interesting story. So how much of you, if any of this, or any of it, is in this book? You
Well, yeah, I mean, the unnamed narrator novelist. I mean, sure. It's the experience of being a novelist is interesting in that a lot of the it's a lot of maybe it's a consistent sort of background hum of humiliation, punctuated by relief from that humiliation.
okay, I may never forget that quote.
So that's where this guy is. He's an adult and he's written books, but he's still got like a backpack, and not a tech bro backpack, but like a JanSport. Anyway, there's something of me in that narrator for sure, but there's also Jeff's sort of story that he tells starts in the mid-90s in Beverly Hills, and I worked for an art appraiser right out of college in Beverly Hills in the 90s. So there's a fair amount of art world stuff, but it's not New York. It's LA art world. And a lot of that stuff comes, I hate doing research, so a lot of it just comes from my memories of those times. But I got that job because I went to the job board. I knew finally, sort of by the end of college at UCLA, that I wanted to be a novelist. And I went to the job board and I saw, fine art and rare book appraiser. I was like, oh, books, I want to do books. So turned out to be like 97% art appraisal. And nothing to help me write books. But I was a doofus, I didn't know anything. Like I should have gone to New York and interned in a magazine or something. I just see now, looking back, how people do things. And I was much like Jeff, this character who stumbles into this world. And I didn't know much about contemporary fine art. And I learned pretty much all of it on the job. And the weird thing about that experience that I was excited to put into a book was maybe, after having been at the job for a while, I went to a trip to France and I went to the Pompidou, and I'm looking around and I can name all the artists now, right? I know where these pieces fit in their careers and sort of what these artists are about. There's a Clifford Still, there's a Franz Klein or whatever, but I also know what all of them should be insured for, right? And so everything I learned
sets you apart from 98% of the population around you.
Right. But it's also like I felt very ambivalent about it, right? Well, I should just be appreciating the art for the art, not also being entangled in the commerce aspect of it. And it's a weird world because the numbers don't have so much bearing on reality, to my reality. I think obviously if you're a very, very wealthy art collector, the numbers are very meaningful to you. But
I think that's really interesting. And just the fact that you said that you look at the art on so many different levels. When you unpack the story and read the story, there are a couple of things that struck me. One is that the prose is very literary. And two, and even though it's literary, it still has an ending that I understood why it was there. So that was comfortable for me. And the other part was the dynamic between the two main characters, and the psychological. I mean, I was thinking it's what I like to call genre bending, because it is a thriller and it is literary, but it's also psychological suspense to a certain degree. I'm not sure if you could cram any. If there had been a ghost in there, I think you could have hit the trifecta with paranormal. But how do you look at this book, and how did you, when you conceived the story, how did you decide to tell that story and roll it out the way you did?
Yeah, I would call it's interesting. Genre bending is a good term from a reader's perspective. From my perspective, it's genre ignoring or genre ignorance. I just kind of followed the story where I thought it would go and should go. Of course, as a human being in this culture today, I'm absorbing all these genres, probably more through television and film when it comes to, any kind of crime or thriller thing. But this book, it's short, but it was a difficult, long labor and birth. The sort of early draft of it was actually about 1.5 times longer than this book and never got anywhere near an ending. And it was directly told from Jeff to the reader. It's a first person narration. And I couldn't seem to make it work, in part because I wasn't sure, what was the real impetus behind the telling. And it was while I was reading another book, I was working on a different book and reading a different book, that I came across this structure of an unnamed narrator relating somebody else's story. That book was Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald, which is a really wonderful book that I read when it came out, and I just reread in 2017. And my book is not like Austerlitz at all, other than I thought, wow, what if I put a narrator in between Jeff and the reader? And then it added an extra layer. And what it did was it put the storytelling itself, like the act of telling his story, his past, up on the stage, up on the, within the world, within the book, rather than between the narrator and the reader. And that, in a lot of ways, becomes the subject of the book. There's a lot of, plot shenanigans and things that happen within it. But when you take a step back, a lot of the book has to do with how Jeff looks back at his own life, whether he's willing to acknowledge his own ambition or his own dark side. And so it's all in the telling. It's a book about storytelling and how we look at our lives, I think. So in terms of deciding how to tell the story, I was noodling around with something so something happened to me in the late 90s. It was just this little anecdote, but I was down in Seattle with some friends by the waterfront. There's something called Seafair, which is like their Fleet Week Navy ships and stuff. And I saw this guy air drumming, not paying attention to anything, with headphones on, and he was walking on a collision course with a freight train. And so I managed to get his attention and stop him, and the freight train goes by, and he's like, "Oh my God, you saved my life." And then he just said, "I'm going to buy you a big steak dinner." And right. And then the train went by, and then he just kept on going and air drumming away. And my friends made fun of me for years afterward. But I, about 10 years ago, started noodling with a drowning in a swimming pool story, where the rescuer gets a steak dinner as a reward. And at the end of that steak dinner says, "That was great. Let's do it again next week." And it's like, how many steak dinners is it worth? Which is a little too programmatic, and it made for a not very good story, but it was the birth of what became this story, this rescue, and this question of how we deal with being rewarded or not rewarded. Like, what kind of entanglements arise when you save somebody's life outside of a formal context like a hospital.
And also what struck me is it's amazing how much you reveal about yourself when you tell a story. So whether you're consciously aware of it or not, how much of you enters into every story that you tell, starting from the story that you choose to tell.
Yeah.
And then what you choose to reveal and what you choose not to reveal. Are you comfortable with that? Are you, like you said, are you willing to face that? So I think that was a really interesting dynamic as I was reading.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get yourself in that space?
And it's hard to say. I mean, the book took far too long to write. My process is such that I tend to spend a lot of time writing a draft that I think is going to be the book, but actually isn't, in order to sort of almost upload new material into my own head, so that when I go and start over, that material has already kind of been fermenting, like kimchi, in my.
I was thinking more like a fine wine, but that's okay.
In the jar up here, yeah. So the idea with this method that I'm looking at retrospectively, it's not something the way I plan to do it, but is that then what comes out can feel like it's almost like at hand, right? It can be written in a way that's confident and fluid and feels like, oh, this and this detail and these things are all just occurring to me right now, which is an illusion, because as with many novels where a narrator is just and they have all these things at hand, it's constructed because most people I know aren't able to sort of sustain that kind of creative flow onto the page, for an entire novel. So
It'll be relatively sane and
right.
So I can't believe time is flying by. So I have to ask you, this is the question everybody asks. And, we were talking about the couch book tour on the press junket.
Yeah.
So the Barack Obama thing,
Mm.
just real quickly.
Yeah.
Tell that story about when you found out Barack Obama was reading your book.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that is a lot of these things that happen, you get a heads up from your publicist, like you're up for this book club that's going to be on TV or something like that. And things are submitted for awards or whatever. This comes out of the blue. It just appears on Obama's social media. Boom. Nobody knows anything about it ahead of time. So I get a text from my publicist, wake the F up in like capital letters, because they're on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, and like, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? And then boom, there it is. It's just, Barack Obama had me on his summer reading list. So yeah, it's great. I think it cinches interestingly, like there are people who are well-meaning and friends or acquaintances, other writers who are like, yeah, I'll get to your book someday, or people who are on the fence and then they hear, oh, it's Barack Obama's pick. Okay, moves to the top of the stack. So I think it, in terms of just the raw, like getting read, it helps like that. My question, I keep meaning to write, I gotta send him a signed copy, I think, with a thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but my main question is, did Michelle read it?
Yeah.
I want to know if she read it.
Who do you think gave it to him? Come on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I did ask that question in all sincerity, and they said just probably some bookseller handed it to him, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
gotta be a thrill, though. I mean,
It's great. Yeah. It's delightful, and it's a book is like, sending a kid out into the world for, college or whatever. And so if they like land a great job, it doesn't feel like you landed the job necessarily, but you're very happy for the child. And so I'm very happy.
Oh, sorry, I have to ask you one quick question.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't Barack Obama reading your book that gave you the biggest thrill, who would in your life give you the biggest thrill if you found out that they read your book? Well, and loved it.
Yeah. He died last year, but Javier Marias, the Spanish writer, I love his work, and I've been engaged with it and really into it for the past years. And so, like a literary hero would be very special. When I was younger, I would have said maybe Thomas Pynchon or something like that. One who did, and it popped up in one of these little capsule things in maybe Elle magazine, I don't remember, was Sofia Coppola. And yeah, and I thought, wow, that's, Sofia Coppola, I love her work. And she's also artistically brave and really interesting. And so I thought, is that almost cooler than Obama? Because like, I love Obama. I think Obama was, one of our best presidents, but he had to kill people, right? Like Sofia Coppola never killed anybody.
Yeah, and he can tell a story, but did he tell a story? Well, he told a story that, millions of people bought. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right. And then, so where can people find Mouth to Mouth? Let's help.
Wherever great books are sold.
There we go.
Yeah, you can, it's on all the online retailers. It is in a lot of independent bookstores. It's just out in paperback, which is handy. And it has a fun Q&A in the back. If you have more questions for me, maybe they're answered there. So I would suggest, your local independent bookstore obviously is the place that I would suggest. There's something called bookshop.org, which is a website that can ship it to you, but you can choose your local bookstore that helps to support them, or or independent bookstores in general. If you do want to buy it from, Mr. Space Penis, that's fine too.
He's got that big, but never mind.
That
But
rocket.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. Wherever you want to buy it, I'm always happy to find readers, and your local library probably has it. So there's
Right.
that.
And if you are reading it in the library, if you could take a few minutes to leave a review, that would be great. That would help out, right?
But only if you liked it.
All positive reviews only. There
If
we
you have
go.
negative reviews, contact me directly. I like good critique.
So you can tell Antoine that you have the thick skin to be a writer, and maybe a little underwriting neurosis just to keep your writing relatable, which I love. So real quickly, again, what are you working on now, or are you working on something?
Yeah, I'm working on a new thing. It takes me forever to land on what it will be, and I'm it's interesting because there are all different sort of sources for the kind of energy required to embark on a long form project. And so some of the sources in this new thing are personal and familial, and so then I wonder, is any of this going to translate into something that readers want to read? And I have to put that question aside every time, because you never know what it's going to turn out and become. So I'm working on something new. My life is like in a bunch of different scattered things. So I'm writing in a Google Doc for the first time, which allows me to just, wherever I am, I can just sit down and add to what I'm working on. And all right, I'll make a confession. Along those lines, the thing that I'm working on, in order to get it out and to be able to return to it fluidly, I just haven't put a period on it yet. So it's just I think it's about a 30-page sentence right now. So every time
conscious.
Well, yeah, it's sort of stream of consciousness. I mean, it's reassuring to me to return to a comma, waiting for me, and then I can just keep going.
And then it's never that period. Nothing ever ends, so you don't have to have that starting anxiety.
That's
right. It's just you're in the process. I love it.
In the flow, in the process, but it's really making my own clay. You know what I mean? I'm in an excavation process, doing that thing that I was talking about, putting the cabbage and stuff up here for the kimchi.
For the fermentation, I remember.
That's right.
All right. Well, you know what? I think readers and writers both got a lot out of conversation. I think that there are a lot of good writing tips about keeping your creativity alive and fresh, and keeping your process going, and motivation, and being brave. So I want to thank you for that. Hopefully you'll come back when your next novel comes out. That'd be fun. And if there's anything we can do in between, let us know.
One New Year's resolution I made probably about 5 years ago. I don't usually make them, but I said, be more brave artistically. And so that's nice to hear that.
Because, we need new stuff, because our brains, we get a lot of some similar stuff, like you said, on movies and TV and books. And it's great to read a book that is different and makes you think. And Mouth to Mouth is one of those books. So everybody, if you can, please support Antoine, because obviously he needs it. And buy the book if you can, or read it in the library, and leave a review, or just buy the book because you're looking for something that you'll enjoy and take you on a journey. So I want to thank you for being with us and being subjected to all this torture this morning, Antoine, and everybody else for being here. If you would like to share this interview with somebody who didn't get a chance to join us this morning, you can share on Facebook, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is SCWA Writers Online, and see this interview with Antoine and hundreds of others. So thank you again, and we will see you next Wednesday, on the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. Until then, take care.